Hello and welcome to ProLab Studios. My name is Michael Gallion, and I do business development for Bird Barrier. And we have another podcast for you today. While you're driving and doing some work, or maybe you're stuck at home waiting for customers to call, you can continue your education with the Bird Control podcast. And this one is not exciting or sexy at all, but let me tell you what the subject today can make or break a business. So if you are serious about growing your business and you've gotten involved in bird control work, I can tell you that this isn't just about bird control work. If you're a pest control professional, maybe you just went out on it alone and you started your own company and you're running around trying to gather up new accounts and everything. There is something called cash flow that you're going to learn about very fast, and it will shut you down faster than any regulation that you'll ever get for not using the proper chemistry or label applications. Cash flow is king because it is the bloodline of any business. Now, what I'm going to tell you about are a few things that come from the world of companies that succeed very well in bird control work. They go from just an average kind of starter, making a little bit of extra profit doing bird work, becoming a major force where bird control projects create a lot of profit for their companies. And there are a lot of mistakes that even those companies will make. They get going and they grow fast, they grow rapidly, they bite off more they can chew, and next thing you know, they're choking to death because they just cannot fund the operation. They cannot pay their employees as they go along. So the first concept that I want you to think about is an invoice versus a proposal. Now, this gets involved in sales, right? In my sales training, I talk about, the best time to close a deal and how follow-up is so incredibly important, and should we do big detailed proposals for everybody. Rather than writing up proposals and making this massive work of art that's very beautiful on paper and everything, maybe you could have already closed the deal, simplified the process. And that sort of mentality comes from people who are closers. That is there any reason we can't move forward with this project right now? And then if there's no good reason, get to it. Now, that usually has to do with funding and approvals, right? That what we're talking about. Many times they'll say, no, we don't have the funds and that sort of thing. So we have a whole process for dealing with those type of objections. But the point is that the best companies go in, they inspect, they do a good job of assessing the site, they do a good job of presenting a proposal solution. Now, from that point, what separates the winners from the losers is those people follow up immediately and carry through on a process to close the deal, no matter how big or small. So I want you to have the mentality, first of all, that you're going to close deals rather than write up proposals as much as possible. Sometimes you can close deals on the spot, but believe me, I know some of you are saying, what is this guy talking about? We have to send out bids, jobs that are $20,000, $30,000. They're getting competitive bids. And of course, I understand that process, right? That process does require that you do an intensive proposal that's really well crafted, that you use Bird Barrier's resources to include in. But the idea that you're spending a lot of time doing a lot of estimates and all this physical energy in there instead of closing smaller deals is something that could really make a difference. Smaller deals in bird work is a trend that I've taught people that are new to bird control work, and that allows them to grow at a steady pace and they get in the door and get started. So one example is when you do a big bid on a job and it turns out it's too much of a budget, a lot of people will just say, well, let us know when you have the funds, and they walk away from that job. But the closers that are going to generate a lot more cash flow for their company are going to take a smaller part of something rather than zero on a much bigger job, right? So the way that we do that is that we at least get our foot in the door and start bringing some kind of provable result with efficacy to that customer, no matter how small. Do a small section if possible, and then generate a small invoice to get started. Now, part of this whole process is onboarding you as an approved vendor. So if you do a small approvable amount and then you become an approved vendor and their accounting department has you in, you have an account number, perhaps you give them terms of, say, net 30 days and that sort of thing, you've broken through the wall, you've gotten through the gatekeeping portion, and now you become a vendor that can do work for that particular company. So you want to have that mentality as well, as get yourself in the door. Sometimes what we will do is help you with free materials, because sometimes a really big opportunity, the paperwork involved in onboarding you as a vendor can be a whole project in and of itself. But what you can do is do a free test area sometimes, a small test area, especially with optical gel. I talk a lot about the opportunities, but this product can get your foot in the door. You treat a nesting situation, isolate, do a small test of an area, and you do that for free. And once the customer sees, wow, this person has something that really works. We had this big problem of birds, but they took care of a small area. They did it for no charge. It shows that you really believe in what you're doing, that you're willing to invest in your own time and money to do this for them. There's a sense afterwards, if it works, that they feel a sense of like, wow, I've got to take care of this guy. He really did a great job of proving efficacy. And so they will onboard you a lot faster. They will get you through all the hurdles. They'll get you in the door as an onboarded vendor. So that's one of the first concepts that we want to talk about. Another thing that many people in bird control or special projects will make is not getting a deposit. If you hire a painting crew to come and paint your house or your office, they will always have a deposit that they need from you to get started. And it's usually around half of the invoice. So if you've got a job that's going to be about $30,000, you're going to get a deposit for, $10,000 to $15,000 up front, so that you can go and get your materials, get your crew in, be able to pay them through the process, and then at the end of the project, you collect the balance on the job. And what's beautiful about this is if you do it right, that's going to represent close to the net profit on the job. In other words, you did this job, even if you gave them net 30 days on that balance, you've at least covered your hard costs, so you're not taking a deficit to your cash flow. Now, I don't recommend you do that either, even giving terms. Giving terms should be a necessary evil. It should be the only way in which you're going to close that deal, is that you must give terms. And there are businesses that are big enough in their operation for their accounting department that once they issue a PO from the company, then they're going to pay. They're going to give you terms. It's a legal binding contract when you get a purchase order. And unless you fail to produce the results that they are asking for, they're going to have to pay you the balance. But whenever possible, avoid giving terms, especially when you're new and you're starting out. What you want to do is get the money up front. It can be much better for your business sometimes is to pass on a job that the customer is not willing to give a deposit on, rather than deplete your cash flow resources that you need to pay your team or yourself to do ongoing work for the rest of your other customers. So don't forget to ask for deposits whenever possible. I mentioned terms, again, necessary evil. The most you should give is net 30 days. That's more or less the standard. You might get into a big industrial account, it'd be a great brand, and they just tell you up front that 90 days is their standard. You have to factor this in. Can you go 90 days before you get this big check from the company? You have to weigh out the options. And the best companies that do these bigger projects, their secret weapon is the next thing that I'm going to mention, which is cash reserves. You know, that untouchable money, or at least a credit line that you have available, more likely the reserve, like there's money in the bank that you keep and you don't touch, so that you're always able to say yes to the big jobs that other people can't because of that cash flow problem. So as they say, it takes money to make money. So these are really critical points that are often overlooked by people that do large-scale bird control work. We will see some really good operators after a year, 2 or 3, and what will happen if they don't protect their cash reserves through this process, through these points that I'm making, they will get to about year 2 or 3, and they will no longer have technicians that will work for them, because those people have families to feed, they've got to continue to get their paychecks, and if they're constantly being told, well, look, the customer didn't pay for the project yet, they're going to move on to more stable income, and then it just becomes this vicious cycle. Your reputation as being a good company that pays its employees and builds a team can become tarnished, and then you're ever in this loop of trying to, you know, run your business without the ability of cash flow. Also, you know, we become wary, like all of a sudden we have a customer that's new to our company, they do a bunch of work. Well, so often what'll happen is they burn the bridge with the other vendors, and they owe them a bunch of money because they've gotten into this cash flow deficit problem. So, you know, keep your vendors, you know, the suppliers of your materials happy, keep your employees happy, keep cash flow, make it come from the customers that you serve. If you provide good quality products and services, there's no reason why you can't ask for deposits and protect your cash flow for the future. So those are some good tips on how to operate, why cash flow is king when it comes to bird control work. I hope this has been helpful. We will see you at the next podcast.